Jax Ryland had one rule: finish the run, take the pay, and never ask questions. He believed in routes and manifests and the soft click of a well-tuned engine. He did not believe in legends. Legends belonged to taverns, not to freight lanes. Yet, the universe had a way of moving things from taverns into the hold of a tired freighter. The freighter was the Pelican. It was older than the newest port clocks. Its paint was patched with layers of stories. The cabin smelled of oil and coffee, and the small blue light that never quite went out. Jax had slept on its bench, argued with its autopilot, and fixed its starter more times than he could count. He loved it like a stubborn animal. No beauty, but honest. They found the envelope on a morning that smelled like burned toast and distant rain. It sat on the dashboard, as if someone had left it there to test him. The envelope was small. It had a seal stamped with an hourglass and a crown. No name, no manifest entry. The station was quiet. There were no visitors who could have slipped it inside. Jax rolled his eyes. He could have thrown it away. He did not. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One line, delivered to the coordinates. Do not open, do not tell. Pay will buy you peace. Under the line was a number more credits than Jax had ever seen. Enough to buy a small moon. Enough to buy a place where no one knew his name. Jax checked the holds and the manifest twice. The Pelican was empty. The drives hummed the way they always did. His hands found the small knife he carried, the one with a chipped handle, and then closed around. The paper, he told himself this was a job. A strange job, but a job. The coordinates pointed to a dead sector. Dead sectors were for ghosts and old things. Shipping lanes bent away from them. Radios went thin there. People who had gone missing were said to have taken the wrong route. Honest captains avoided those paths. Still, money had its own gravity. Jax set the course. On the second night out, the freighter's scanner blinked. A small blip, no larger than a transport buoy, hovered at the edge of the scope. Jax frowned. Objects this far out usually had names. This one had none. It held position, as if it waited for the Pelican. He told himself it was a probe. He told himself many things. Then the lights came. They did not fall like meteor streaks. They moved together, keeping formation. Little lights traced a shape too precise to be natural. They edged closer, and then drew back like a net testing a fish. Jax tightened his seatbelt and felt a cold at the base of his skull, like someone tapping a bone. He switched to manual, fingers working the levers he knew by touch. A small ping sounded from the console. Not a warning. A single image arrived on a frequency Jax had never seen. A plane crate. No label, no locks. A crate that, to the scanner, was in his cargo hold. He did not remember seeing it. He did not remember loading it. The Pelican had been alone in dry dock 2 days before. He opened the cargo bay, and a hush moved like breath through the metal. The crate was small. It was matte gray and smelled faintly of old oil. Its top came up without a sound. Inside lay a sphere no larger than a fist. It was black as a wet street. It ate the light around it like silence eats a word. When Jax reached, the air grew still. For a second he felt something like memory slide across his palm. He almost closed the lid. Almost. His curiosity was a hard thing. He touched the sphere. The touch did not shock him. It was not hot or cold. It was like listening. Suddenly the cabin filled with faces, 2 or 3 brief flashes of people Jax did not know. A child laughing in a language he could not name. A ship's bell that had long been broken. Then the faces were gone. The sphere lay quiet and ordinary. Jax's fingers trembled. The console chimed again. A short message scrolled on an unknown channel. They know you have it. Then a list of names appeared. Names Jax recognized, and names that had no place in current charts. Admirals, smugglers, the burned crest of a corporate fleet. At the end of the list was a single word he could not read cleanly at first. When it resolved, his throat went dry. Buyer. Someone had paid for what the sphere could do. Someone had paid more than the sky, and called it a right. Someone else had moved to take that right back. Jax thumbed the envelope in his pocket. The credits could buy him silence, but the sphere could turn silence into a shout. He thought of the moon he might buy. He thought of the small room where he had kept a photograph of a woman whose face he could not bear to look at lately. Money could not bring her back. Maybe it could buy a clean bed. He closed the crate and hid it beneath a false panel behind the engine. He checked seals and locked the hold. Then he did the only thing he had done all his life. He pretended nothing had changed. He pulled into a refuel station too, jumps out, and let the men there think that Pelican was on a normal run. A man at the bar asked about the route. He wore medals the way Rust wears a Hulproud, but old. His eyes were coal. He smiled and revealed. He knew the Pelican by name. Jax lied. The man did not believe lies. The man slid a cheap coin across the table and said softly, "Rumor travels faster than engines. Keep your seat warm, Ryland. Men will want what you carry." Then he left as if he had never been there. Jax walked back to the Pelican. The engines hummed a little louder. The dead sector dimpled on his map like a bruise in space. He set a course and stepped on the throttle. Whatever the sphere was, someone was already moving to collect both it and the man who carried it. Outside lights stitched across the black. The chase had begun. Jax kept his hands on the wheel until his knuckles went pale. The lights followed them like teeth. He felt each ping on the console as if it were a knock on his skull. He did not sleep. He did not eat more than a bite of cold bread. He flew the Pelican like a thing that still mattered. When the chase eased, Jax set a quiet course for the junk moon Mina ran. The moon was a heap of old hulls and towers made from ship ribs. It had one market that did not ask questions. The market of quiet names, people called it. Mina was a broker who traded secrets for silence. If any person could tell him what the sphere meant, it would be her. The Pelican docked in a crooked pier under a sign that had lost 2 letters. The air smelled of burned wire and fried food. People with patched suits moved like ghosts. A child sold a toy engine for a ration pack. A trader tried to sell a memory for a small battery. Mina waited where the market turned into a maze. She was smaller than Jax expected. Her hair was cut close. Her eyes measured everything. She had a ledger the size of a palm. The ledger was a thin device with pages that glowed like old paper. She looked at the sphere and did not blink. "This is not a toy," she said simply. Her voice did not rise. "It is a right." Jax blinked. He had not been ready for that word. "A right," he said. Mina touched the sphere with a finger as if it were a thing alive. The market hummed. Jax felt the crowd draw nearer like those lights from before. Mina's finger left a small green mark on the sphere, and it pulsed. "A right is a thing people buy to make a law obey them," Mina said. "You can buy land, you can buy fleets, and sometimes you can buy what I call a. If you own it, the old contracts answer to you. You can say a city belongs to you. You can tell a court to listen. You can call payment from the world." Jax had not understood law to be a tool that could be bought. He had known coin and roots and people who would not bother a freighter. This was something else. Mina's ledger glowed. She swiped a finger, and a string of entries ran across the air. Names, dates, prices. A city that once bought a right. A company that tried and failed. A scratched line where a buyer's name had been erased. "Someone bought this before," Mina said. "They paid, and then they lost it." The ledger remembers the cost. The buyer's name was scratched out like someone tried to hide a wound, but the mark of the hourglass stayed. Whoever owns the hourglass can claim the thing the right names. Jax felt his chest tighten. He thought of the credits in the envelope. He thought of a small moon waiting for him. He had not meant to carry a law. Outside the market, A man in rusted metals watched from the shadow of a tower. He was the same man who had slouched at the refuel bar. His face was long, and his smile was older than a ship's keel. He had company, a thin woman with weapons on her hip, and a ship patch that read Voltsec. You should not have touched it. The man called in a voice that sounded like gravel. People die for rights. Mina did not flinch. She closed the ledger softly. You can keep the sphere hidden in a vault that scrubs names. Or you can move it and let the world see who claims it. Hiding is safe for a while, but the ledger will hunt anyway. Jax laughed once. It was a small, scared sound. How do you hide a right from a ledger? With money and law, Mina said. Vaults are built to fool men, but some buyers have bigger ledgers. They own fleets and courts. They can force a ledger's hand. A pirate slipped into the market then, grinning with teeth that had been in too many fights. He smelled like fuel. He wanted the sphere for reasons Jax did not yet. No. Give it up, freighter, the pirate sang. Sell it. We will give you a price. Jax thought of the coin. He thought of sleep on a soft bed. He thought of the photograph he hid under his pillow. He almost sold it. Then Mina pushed a small chip across the table. This is a mirror root, she said. Make a crate that looks like the one that holds your sphere. Put a fake inside. Let the rumor flow. Keep the real sphere hidden behind your engine. I can sell the fake to a buyer who wants proof, not power. She smiled like someone who had lost more than she had won. It costs favors, not credits. The pirate laughed, and the man with metals spat. The pirate would take the crate and brag. The metals could track the rumor like a trap. If Jax could make the market believe the fake, they would move toward it. The real sphere might get a day, maybe a week. That might be enough, Jax agreed. He built the fake crate in a single long night. He made it feel heavy and important. He used a speaker to play a loop of the sphere's hum. He sealed it with wax and a false hourglass mark. Mina loaded a courier ship and sold the story. The market buzzed. People pointed and whispered. Rumor has teeth, she told him. Make it bite the right place. As Mina sealed the deal, a new sound cut through the market. A deep, clean tone that Jax had never heard, like a cannon fired in a library. He looked up. Out past the rusty pylons, space tore open. A warship slid out of warp and filled the sky. Its hull was black and smooth. The letters on its side read, Voltsec. It moved slow and sure. Its shadow draped the market like a hand. Mina did not look surprised. She cleaned her hands and said quietly, They moved faster than I thought. Jax felt the sphere hum under his false engine panel. The market went very, very quiet. Boots hit metal. Voices sharpened. Someone shouted that Voltsec had come to take a crate. Someone else said they had come for a right. Jax had hidden one truth from the world. Now the world had found him. The Pelican's engines coughed awake. He had a fake crate in the cargo bay, and the real sphere behind a panel that no one could see. He had a plan made of smoke and thin hope. Outside, Voltsec descended like a judge. Mina's ledger blinked a single line, and then grew dark. The green mark on the sphere pulsed once, and then again. The market's lights went out like a blink dot. Jax set his jaw. He started the ship. The market ran. The Pelican lifted, and the junk moon shrank like a coin passing from hand to hand. He could feel Voltsec's shadow on his tail. Someone had paid to buy the right. Someone else had come to claim it. And Jax had just enough time to decide which crate the galaxy would open. The Pelican shook as it left the junk moon behind. Jax kept the ship low and slow. He watched the stars like a man watches roads. Voltsec stayed on his tail like a long shadow. The fake crate sat heavy in the cargo bay. The real sphere hummed, behind a false panel, quiet as a secret heartbeat. Jax aimed for the market of lost stars, because lost things hid there. The market hung around an old, dying sun. It was a ring of stalls. towers, and rope bridges. Sailors came to trade what they could not use and what they could not forget. Maps were sold for food rations. Songs were sold for a single clean shirt. People who wanted to vanish changed names there and left with new faces. The Pelican rolled into the market's orbit at dusk, when the sun made everything soft and gold. Jax told himself the place would hide him. It was crowded and loud. A freighter could sink into the noise. That was the point. He pushed the ship into a slot between two hulls. The market smelled of frying oil and old engines. Voices layered on one another. Traders called out offers. A man sold a memory of a lost lover. A woman sold a map to a hidden calm port. Children chased a small drone that sang lullabies. Jax tied the Pelican's lines and kept his head low. He wore a jacket that hid his hands. He moved through the market, like a shadow among shadows. Mina's mirror route worked at first. Rumors reached the right ears. Men with sharp teeth bought the story of a crate that held a law. They wanted proof, more than power. The fake crate was a good story. It looked like weight. It looked like desire. Still, the market was dangerous. People there could read a lie from a man's boots. Jax felt eyes on him. He kept to the alleys, where voices could not find him. He slipped into a stall where an old trader offered to read a future for a coin and a smile. Jax did not ask about the future. He asked which shelf held treaties. Treaties are heavy, the trader said. He rubbed a palm over a stack of papers. People trade light things for heavy things here, but every heavy thing needs a witness. Jax thought of Mina's ledger and Judge Aaron's laws. He thought of the credits in the envelope and the photograph under his pillow. He did not want to be a witness. He wanted a quiet moon. Quiet was a dangerous wish. The market center thrummed that night. A public auction climbed the steps of an old command tower. Auctions there were like storms. People lined up to bid on oddities. A song that stopped a child's cry. A route that led to a ghost harbor. A shard of metal that once belonged to a king's ship. The auction drew the curious and the cruel. It drew Vault's ex-interest too. Jax realized the chase had not ended. It had only learned to whisper. He stayed near the back, pretending not to care. Mina's fake crate sat on a display like a prize. A thin shroud covered it. Someone had paid good money to bring it for show. The crowd smelled of hope and metal. Above the crate, a floating banner held an hourglass and a crown. The symbol made Jax's palms sweat. The auctioneer began. He spoke with a voice that could peel paint. People shouted numbers. Gavel knocks echoed like small thunder. The fake crate's cover came off. The audience leaned forward like a single animal. They wanted proof. Then the auctioneer said something that stopped Jax in his tracks. He read a name, an old, quiet name, louder than the sun. Ryland, he called. The name rolled through the crowd like a thrown stone. People turned. Jax felt the air shift. He had never wanted notice. He had never wanted a name on a block. Whispers became questions. Someone in the crowd spat that Ryland had a sister, that he left home, that he ran. People started to point. Faces Jax had never seen narrowed. A man with a ledger like Mina's moved through the crowd. A woman with a patched uniform pushed forward, eyes like cold metal. The name on the block had painted a target. Jax did not run. He moved toward the Pelican because the ship was the only thing that had ever been honest with him. He walked fast. He felt like the market watched every step. Children stopped their games. Traders folded their counters and waited to see if blood would spill in their lanes. Behind him, the fake crate sold for more credit than Jax had spent in a life. Men cheered and counted. Vault's men took the crate and carried it to a small black ship. They showed off the fake like a trophy. Jax watched them strap it down. He wanted to laugh and vomit at the same time. The story had bitten a wrong hand. He jumped into the Pelican and slammed the hatch. The engines coughed and came alive. He felt the spheres pulse through the floor, a tiny drumbeat against his boots. As the ship eased from the dock, a child threw a handful of bright beads and called out, "Carry our lost things to safe hands." The beads scattered like stars. Jax pushed the throttle. The market blurred. Behind him, lights flared as Vault-6's ship moved. The black ship that carried the fake crate turned its nose and followed. Jax could hear a new noise on the comm. It was not the tidy hum of a ship. It was the slow, odd groan of a vessel that had been wronged by time. He glanced at the scanner. Far behind, something fell out of warp where nothing should have been. The object was not a ship, he knew. It wore no flag. It had sails made of dark metal and windows like swords. It folded out of the night with a sound like a door opening in a tomb. For a single breath, the whole Pelican went quiet. Jax's hand found the knife at his belt, and his mouth went dry. On the console, a tiny light blinked, and a voice, thin and old, fed its single message into the local net. They came back for what was not theirs. Do not look away. Jax did not understand the words, but he knew the meaning. The market had drawn a map. The auction had named him. And in the wake of the Pelican, a ghost ship had fallen out of warp, its path aimed straight for them. The treaty world moved like a patient storm. Its towers had slow faces and wide windows that watched old skies. Here, laws had weight. Papers were carved into stone. Judges kept promises the way sailors kept ropes tightly and without pride. Jax had hoped for slow answers. He found a room that smelled of dust and cold tea. Judge Erin sat behind a table that had seen more oaths than years. Her hands were plain and steady. She looked at the sphere the way someone looks at a tool they do not yet trust. The courtroom was quiet. Even the air seemed to wait. "Bring it here," she said. Her voice was small, but it filled the long room. Jax set the sphere on the table. It did not glow. It looked like a stone a child might hide. Judge Erin touched it once, with 2 fingers. The sphere pulsed, and the room filled with a soft sound, like pages turning. "This is not just a thing," she said. "It is a name maker. Whoever holds its right may claim a name, and make law answer to that claim." Jax tried to feel the meaning. He had hauled crates and engines. He knew rust and roots. Law was a different engine. It moved slower and could crush faster. Judge Erin explained, in plain words. "A contract is only a tool," she said. "A name is only a door. But when many doors answer one key, that key owns a path no single man can walk alone. This sphere, it makes a key." She opened a drawer and took out old pages. They smelled like rain and iron. She read stories of cities that paid for rights and became rulers of law, then vanished under the weight of what they owned. Names could be dangerous when held by one hand. Outside, the treaty world's bells did not ring. News traveled here in notes folded into bread. People came and watched, with faces that tried to seem casual. Jax felt dozens of eyes press into his back. He knew the moment was small and fragile. "They will come for it," a clerk warned. "Corporations buy names like they buy ports. They do not stop until the right is in a safe bank." Judge Erin did not argue. She looked at Jax and then at the sphere. "You have a choice," she said. "You can sell it to a vault, bind it to coin, and let a ledger hide it. Or you can bind it to people who will speak for the name." "Bind it to people?" Jax asked. He thought of how people changed like weather. He thought of his sister and of a child in a market who wanted lost things kept safe. When a living community signs a charter, their voice becomes part of the law, Judge Erin said. If the charter carries the right answers not to a ledger or a court in a corporation's vault, but to the will of those who signed it. Contracts obey the people who made them. The idea frightened him. It also felt right. He had come to carry something that reeked of ownership. Maybe ownership could be changed into promise. They began to gather witnesses. Old teachers and dock workers, a small choir from a slum, a lawyer who still wore his ring like a joke. People came with pens and small coins and scars. Judge Aaron read the lines slowly. Each line had plain words and a blunt meaning. Each signer nodded and put ink to paper. The sphere hummed like a thing listening. Words spread like oil on water. The treaty world woke to a new noise, engines and distant calls. On a far horizon, black shapes moved. The corporate fleet arrived with slow, perfect ships that shaded the sun. Their flags were clean and sharp. Their captain's voice on the come was calm like a blade. Judge Aaron boomed the corporate envoy through a formal channel. By right of prior purchase, we claim to represent the missing buyer. Surrender the sphere. We offer restoration and recompense. The lawyer who signed the charter laughed once, a small, bitter sound. You bring coins to a room that smells of promises, he said. Promises do not trade in the same coin. The corporate ships did not answer with voices. They answered with black holes that arranged into lines, and with fighters that peeled away like teeth. Volts seckling legal, and hungry hung over the treaty world like a second night. Judge Aaron did not back down. She stood and read the name of the charter aloud, and the sphere pulsed bright enough to make the lawyers in the room blink. The words tied the right to living hands. That one act made the right visible across systems. Registers that once slept now pulsed awake. The ledger lines traced the signatures and broadcast them in low, archaic code. Across the sky, the corporate fleet began to move into positions. They did not fire first. They surrounded. Law and metal stared at each other over the heads of people who had not meant to be in wars. Jax felt the sphere warm under his palm. It showed him small things. A hospital's light restored. A school room filled with children, cold turned to bread. Each image came with a sound like a small coin dropped. He understood then. The sphere gave favors that cost others. A region fed so another could be clothed. A song returned, but a day was taken from a factory's life. Ownership had become a balance sheet of lives. Make them see the faces, Judge Aaron said quietly. Show them who signs, not just who pays. Jax closed his hands and did what he had avoided his whole life. He spoke to the sphere in a voice that was rough and small. He asked it to show the charter to those who would take it. The sphere answered with a sound like bells. Across the fleets, screens shimmered. Images of the people who signed teachers, cooks, children flickered on command consoles, and in the Coombs rooms of distant captains. Faces, not numbers. Names that were not coin. For a moment, the clean lines of industry hesitated. The corporate captain opened his mouth to reply with contracts and threats. Instead, he clicked through a report and found, in a ledger fold previously hidden, the name of the city that had bought the right once. The same city that had vanished like smoke. The ledger named it again, and then, like a mouth opening, something in the old law answered far below. Under the treaty city, the old columns made of the law, the sphere used, began to glow. The stone that held old contracts hummed, and a thin vibration ran through the city. People felt it in their bones. In one hall, a tablet that had not spoken for centuries clicked awake and displayed a name no living person had used in ages. Judge Aaron looked up from the table, eyes very steady. You have done what many would fear, she said. You have made law a living thing. Far above, the corporate fleet shifted. Fighters moved into position. Guns that obeyed contract law calibrated. The room filled with the low sound of engines and the faint smell of ozone. Jax tightened his grip on the table. He had traded the chance of a quiet moon for a promise. He did not know if the promise would keep a city or burn it. Outside, a flare bloomed over the black holes. The first shot was not yet fired, but the sky split open with warning lights. The charter had been activated and the galaxy was waking to decide if it would be sold or saved. The judge whispered, "Hold to the people." The sphere hummed, and the world held its breath. Jax had never liked big things. He liked small runs, quiet ports, and engines that coughed politely. Now he stood under a sky full of black ships. The treaty world burned with light from searchlights and the soft fires of broken engines. The charter hung like a flag in the air. People had signed their names. People had chosen to be seen. The corporate fleet moved like a calculation. Its guns were precise and hungry. Vault-6 ships circled like knives. They offered words on open channels. Surrender the sphere, and we will restore what was lost. Their captain spoke of balance sheets and repair schedules. His words were cold and clean. He built pictures of towns rebuilt and songs returned. But Jax had watched the sphere. Show him what price those returns demanded. For every gift the sphere gave, something, somewhere, would be taken. A factory would lose a day. A child would forget a face. The ledger did not count hearts, only the math of exchange. Jax had come for peace. Now the choice was not his alone. Judge. Erin walked the market streets that morning. She moved among the people who had signed the charter. She listened to their fears. She found the teacher who had put her name on the line. The teacher spoke of a school that would gain light if the charter stood. A dock worker whispered of a day of lost wages that would happen if a far-off mine had to give up scarcity. Each voice balanced the others. The people would decide. That was the point of what Jax and Judge Erin had done. The sphere had shown faces across the systems. People who once only followed orders now saw children and cooks and teachers. For the first time the choice felt like more than a number. Jax walked to the ship's deck and felt the Pelican tremble. He thought of the photograph, folded under his pillow. He thought of his sister and the life he wanted to buy. The credits in the envelope seemed to burn his palm. He could hand the sphere to Vault-6 and buy back a quiet night. He could buy a moon. He could stop being hunted. Instead, he climbed into the radio room and spoke to every channel he could reach. He did not have a lawyer's voice or a captain's charm. He had a freighter's bluntness and a heart that had watched a child give away beads. He told the story in simple words. He told them Judge Erin's reading and Mina's ledger. He told them of the child in the market and the teacher's signed name. He asked not for votes counted by machines, but for people to speak. Across the systems, small voices answered. A farmer in a ring world chose to lose a day's harvest if it meant a school would have light. A dock worker in a trade hub agreed to take a wage hit. In quiet places and loud ones, people spoke one by one. They chose small losses for larger gains. The sphere listened. The ledger recorded. The charter lived. The corporate captain watched the votes traffic across his clean screens. He saw faces that could not be reduced to a report. Lawyers argued. In his ear about clauses and precedents. He found the old city name in a ledger and how it once swallowed its buyer. The captain thought of the risk of owning a right that law itself might not hold. He was not a cruel man without fear. He was a man of balance. Jax saw the doubt like a crack in a hull. Vault-Sec struck first with a precision attack. Fighters flashed out and broke the sky. They fired to disable, not to burn. The treaty city answered with old defense nets and makeshift fighters. The Pelican's engines roared, and the market's people watched from below. Jax flew like he had never dared. He threaded the Pelican between guns and shields. He flew close to the open decks of the corporate command ship. He could feel the heat of their guns. He could feel the pull of the sphere tucked under a false plate. He did what pilots do when they have nothing to lose. He used what he had. The sphere, bound by the charter, sang. It amplified voices. It made small choices loud. When Jax steered the Pelican close to the corporate bridge, the captain's screens filled with faces of the votes. He saw the teacher, the child, a miner, a cook, a woman who had signed with a trembling hand. The captain looked at the faces, and his hand stayed. The corporate fighters fell back. They did not break at once. Some commanders wanted to press the attack. Others counted the cost in reputations and markets. Contracts could be broken, but markets could collapse. The fleet's lines wavered. Guns that had not fired since old wars found reasons to hesitate. Then the final trade came. The corporate captain opened the channel and spoke plainly. Without threat, surrender the sphere, and we will return what was lost. Or keep it bound to your charter and accept the costs. Jax looked at Mina's face on a live feed. She had stood on a tower with a child in her arms. Judge Aaron waited in the court. Mina's ledger blinked like a watch. Jax thought of his sister and the moon he wanted. He thought of the people who had given small things for the sake of others. He made a choice that was a kind of buying and a kind of giving. He refused to let the sphere become a ledger hidden in some corporate vault. He refused the easy life. He opened the Pelican's hold for all to see. The sphere rolled across the deck and stopped at the threshold like a bright coin. We did not buy the galaxy, he said into the channel, voice low and clear. We bought a chance to choose. People cheered. Some cried. Some turned away. The corporate captain signed the papers to withdraw. He offered a smaller restitution and withdrew. Most of his fleet. Not every loss was repaired. The charter's bargains had cost small things in small places. A factory lost a week of output. A song had slipped from memory in a distant town. Some losses stayed. The world would carry them like scars. When the smoke settled, Jax sat on the Pelican's bench and let his hands rest on the wheel. The sphere lay quiet and small. It had not taken the galaxy. It had opened a new path. People called him carrier of choice in taverns and legal tablets. He still had dents and debts. He still fixed starters. But the chase had ended, if not the cost. He set a slow course, and the Pelican moved like any honest ship. Months later, when the treaty world had stitched its wounds and some songs returned, an envelope clicked on the Pelican's dashboard. It was small and plain and bore a seal he had seen before. Jax did not look surprised. He smiled once, folded the paper, and eased the Pelican toward a horizon the sphere had shown him long ago.